Hello everyone, how are you doing? Hope you're having a great day. Today is Thursday. We are getting towards the end of April here, 2021. So I haven't done a video, it seems like, in a little while specific to how to build a spec home, becoming a home builder. So I'm going to get into a kind of a detailed video here about budgeting and allowances. And I'm not going to go through the whole budgeting process. I've got another video that I'll put in a link to so that you can, that one's got a lot more detail with it. But I wanted to talk kind of specifically about allowances. I got a question the other day from somebody about what is an allowance? If you're just coming into this industry and you don't have a lot of experience with it, or maybe you're in a different part of the industry where you're not really dealing with or putting together pricing, the word allowance may be something that is kind of foreign to you. So my definition of an allowance is an amount that's being budgeted in for a product or service that doesn't have any markup on it, and also with it being an allowance, it's not an exact amount. So if I'm giving somebody an allowance for flooring, I'm saying this is my best guesstimate as to what I think the flooring's going to be. But if you go over that, then you're going to need to pay the difference. But if you go under it and you don't spend your entire allowance, then you would actually get a credit back. So allowances can be beneficial to both you as the builder or the customer that's having the home built. Because for the customer that's having the home built, if they're given an allowance for flooring and they go in and they choose the flooring company is going to be giving them what the exact amount is. I'm not going to, as a builder, have a markup on that. Or if we're putting in a driveway, somebody lives on a large acreage property, they're going to be a couple hundred feet off the road. It's hard to give an exact price on what the driveway is going to be. Of course, you can get an estimate from the excavator, which I would do, and we do that. But until he actually does the work, you don't know exactly how many loads of stone are going to be dropped there. So when they're putting in a driveway, a construction driveway, no matter what the length is, they're going to scrape down a little bit, try to get beneath the topsoil, and then they're going to put down like the big 3-inch limestone. And that's going to be the construction driveway throughout the construction process. And then at the very end of the build, when they do the finish grading, then they're going to build up the rest of the driveway, kind of finish it off with the 1-inch stone, which it's like a clear stone, road bond, some call it, but that's going to go on at the end. So if you're putting in a driveway, and say you're building the house in spring, you put in the driveway, you scrape down, you put down your big 3-inch stone, but then you get some really, really wet weather, and part of the some of the areas of the driveway are settling, and there's big puddles there, and you need to get the excavator back out there to dump some more stone on it. And that may not be something that was figured into the original estimate, because that's just part of what happened with the earth there, and there's really no way to know that that's going to happen exactly. So for you, the builder, putting your budget together, you're going to get that quote from the excavator. Let's say he tells you it's going to be $7,500 for a 150-foot long driveway. So you're going to put in an allowance of $7,500, because if what I just talked about happens and the excavator has to go back out there and drop another load of stone, and today, April 20th, 2021, a load of limestone, a dump truck load, quad axle dump truck load of stone is $600 approximately, maybe even a little bit more than that. So again, that is not accounted for. So if you've got an allowance of $7,500 in there for the driveway, and just because of weather conditions and what have you, they have to bring in a load of extra stone, that's another $600. So if you had just put that amount of $7,500 and that was just included with the pricing, or even if it was an add-on where you said 70 or 150 foot long driveway, $7,500. It's hard to go back to the customer and say that, okay, the driveway was more, we're going to need more money. But if it's an allowance, or if that is just included, now you're completely locked into that. So if it ends up being, $7,500, but then they drop another $600 a stone, you're going to end up eating that. So the way to avoid that is by using that as an allowance and letting the client know up front, hey, any line items that are allowances in your pricing, this is what this means, and kind of explain to them that exact scenario is a good one, and they'll understand that. And even with digging the hole, maybe you've got an allowance of, $4,500 for digging the hole. Well, once you get down to the point in which you're going to be putting your footings, maybe there's a soil issue and you have to dig down another foot, add in some stone, compact it. Now you just exceeded your allowance. So if you explain to the customer ahead of time, look, there's certain things that I have to put allowances in for, because I can't say 100% that, we have $4,500 for excavating. I can't say what's underneath the ground and if there's going to be an issue when we dig down, because if there is, it's going to exceed $4,500 and you would need to be responsible for that. So it covers you. It's definitely a benefit for you. And when you're putting a budget together, sometimes time is of the essence. Ideally, when you're putting a budget together, before you do anything, as far as, starting the house, going in for the building permit, ideally, you want to have a quote back from every single person and know exactly what the build cost is going to be. That's not always realistic. If it's going to take the excavator, 5 weeks to get back to you and everything else is already ready to go, you don't want to wait, another 3 weeks to get that quote back from the excavator when everything else is ready to go. So you can use your experience. You can look at past bills and like I actually, yesterday, we just updated this. We took 2 recent jobs that we had. One was a 150-foot long driveway. The other one was an 850-foot long driveway. We determined that the average amount, the average amount of stone per foot came out to be $50 per foot. So what we did is we took both of the surveys for the jobs, so we were able to see how long the driveways were. Then we looked at the bills from the excavator, and we looked at what the bills were and how many loads of stone there were. So, knowing that a load of stone is $600, we were able to basically figure out that it's, $50 per foot. So when I'm putting pricing together for somebody, I can put in an allowance for a driveway. If I've got somebody I'm working with that they're going to have a 100-foot long driveway, well, based off of what we're charged for stone, what the charges normally are, I can put in an allowance for $5,000 and know that it's going to be really close. And again, it's probably just as good as getting the quote from the excavator, because he's not going to know if we're going to get a ton of rain in the next 2 weeks and he's going to have to come out there and replenish the stone with the driveway. So I'm going to put in an allowance for that amount, because if something happens there, if it goes over what that allowance is, then the customer is responsible for that. Now, the benefit for the customer in having an allowance is he knows he's not being overcharged for something. So if I've got a $5,000 allowance for the driveway, I'm going to show him the bill for $5,000, or if it ends up being $5,500, here's the bill for that, so that I can prove that's what the amount is. So he or she knows that we're not, unfairly marking something up, and they know that they're paying what the exact cost is for that service and product. So when I put initial pricing together for somebody, I do have a number of allowances that I factor in. I usually have an allowance for lighting, flooring, the driveway, like I talked about. If we're going to do like a septic system, a well is another good one, because you don't know how deep you're going to be drilling. Because with a well, even though you get a quote from a well driller, and maybe he's using depths from other wells in the area, there's no way to know. I mean, the water level underground can definitely vary. So you could have, the next door neighbor, his well was 100 feet deep, but then yours ends up being 150 foot deep. So if you have an allowance in there based off of a 100-foot deep well, which would be, like say $8,500 or something along those lines, and then the well ends up being 150 feet deep and it's $9,500, well, again, because you had the allowance in there, the customer knows and understands that they have to pay the difference there. Flooring is another good one to use that with, because when you're putting initial pricing together for somebody, and you want to be close with these allowances. An allowance just isn't like, oh, okay, I don't want to go get a quote for it, so I'm just going to throw in an allowance because it's not going to hurt me if it doesn't work out. You want to be close. You don't want to give the customer an allowance for his driveway of $2,000 when it's 200 foot long driveway and the bill ends up being $8,000. That's not going to sit well with the customer, and that's not fair to do to the customer. So flooring is another good one though. I will typically take the like the flooring that we have in our model, or if you go to the flooring store and you ask the flooring company, what's a good, what's something that somebody's using that a lot of builders are using in their homes, something middle of the road. I don't want 3/4 inch hardwood or marble floors, and I don't want cheapest vinyl. What's a nice laminate or engineered wood that people are using? How much is that per square foot installed? Use that as your allowance. So if you're putting a price together for a 2,000 square foot home for somebody, and the flooring for the that you've kind of selected to kind of use as a base amount, I guess, is $6 a square foot, then you're going to put $12,000 in for the flooring allowance. Now, again, that's an allowance. The customer understands that if they go to the flooring company and they do end up, choosing something super high end, they understand their flooring allowance is based upon middle of the road. So if you go to the flooring store and you end up picking something out that is, a porcelain wood look floor that's, $15 a square foot installed, they know they're going to be responsible for the difference. Now, a little tip here, when you're putting a budget together for a home, before you actually have the building contract go to the bank for a client or for yourself if you're building a spec home, pick out the exact floors. Because in this scenario that I just described here, you put in that allowance for middle of the road, they close on the construction loan, so the money's already set in stone basically, and then they go and they pick out this stuff that's $15 a square foot. Even though you told them the allowance was for middle of the road, they're not going to be happy that they have to pay that amount out of pocket. It would be best for them to go pick that out before they close on the construction loan. That way they know for sure, okay, if I want to leave this amount where it's at, the total build cost where it's at, I'm going to have to pay for the difference out of pocket. Or because I'm picking this out ahead of time and we know that it's going to be $15 a square foot, then we can put in a flooring allowance of $30,000, and that's what the allowance is. And it's an allowance, but it's exact because you are getting a quote off of it. And now that's the amount that's in their building agreement or in your spec budget. So you're not going to super exceed that. Light fixtures are another great one to do an allowance for. Again, I'll usually take and if you're building your first spec home and you're wanting to put these allowances in, really, I mean, for you want to be getting quotes for this so you know what the exact amounts are. You need to go to the lighting store with your blueprint, pick out the exact fixtures, and get what that amount is. Now that can still be an allowance because maybe you decide at the last minute to do something really cool for the foyer fixture. You're under budget on some other things, and so you're going to go repick your foyer fixture, and so the amount you're spending ends up being a little bit more. So if you've got a $2,500 allowance in your financing, if you're financing the spec build, and you end up spending $2,800, then you're basically paying that $300 out of pocket. So if you're putting pricing together for a customer, again, what I normally do is I'll take what we spent in our model. Say we spent $3,000 on all of the light fixtures in our current model. That's what I'm going to put in to the pricing. That's not our base amount. The base amount in the base price of a house, and this is a whole nother discussion. If you have a base price for a house, you're including very minimal amounts for things in there because you need to just have a base, a starting point to work off of. Nevertheless, when I give somebody pricing, I'm not giving them the base lighting allowance. I'm going to put in there the amount or close to what we spent in the model. Now, again, that's an ample amount. You can definitely get all your fixtures for that amount. You can stay at that allowance and not exceed that. You can stay there and not exceed that amount. But on the other hand, they could have a $3,000 light fixture allowance, and they see this amazing light fixture that they want to put in their 2-story foyer, and it's $2,000. So they're definitely going to blow their $3,000 budget now, but they know that this is an allowance that's in there, and they're going to need to pay the difference for that. But for them, in return, they know that the pricing that they see there at the lighting store, the pricing that they're getting from the lighting store is what they're paying. There's not a builder markup on it. Because I know that's something that's kind of maybe a sticky point for a lot of customers that are building. Like, oh, we know that you put a markup on everything, and well, yeah, I mean that's part of the fee that a builder earns for building a home. And let me tell you, it doesn't always work out that way. And putting in these allowances are safeguards for both of us there. So really, I mean, those are what the advantages of having allowances are. It allows you to fill in your budget, so you can use allowances for certain things that you don't have exact amounts for, certain things that you may not have picked out yet, but this amount that you're going to put in for the allowance is going to be close to what that is, and that's good enough to keep things moving along. And then on the other hand, pricing for the customer, you've got these allowances in there, so it safeguards yourself from having to eat unexpected costs. I mean, with the way that lumber is these days, that could actually be something to consider, is putting in an allowance for the lumber. Getting a bid for what the lumber is based off of the blueprint today. But unfortunately, once you get a bid for somebody's blueprint, and that's today, April 20th, we aren't going to be having the lumber dropped for that house for probably 2 to 3 months. So there could be a huge difference. I mean, based upon last year, what happened, if we bid out a house in August and then all of the lumber doubled and tripled in price at the end of the year, we got stuck with some homes where we had a lumber bid of $25,000 for a house in August. And then when it came time for the lumber to actually be delivered to the site, the lumber cost $50,000, $60,000. That's a huge chunk to eat. And that's not something that we've experienced in other years before. It's not something that is always something that you have to be on the lookout for. Definitely more so now. We're more aware of it now. But maybe that's something. Maybe getting a quote for what the lumber is today on this house, and then, getting a quote on the lumber like right before it's going to get dropped, and, having the quote that you got today be the allowance. Now, the advantage that could be given to the client is, hey, look, if because I honestly, I don't feel like lumber is going to or can go up that much higher. I would think that if anything, at some point it is going to come back down, but not by a lot. So say, you get a blueprint bid for a customer's home that you're building, and this really isn't going to work for your spec home because you're going to pay what the cost is either way. But for customer home, you get a bid for the lumber package, it's $35,000, and you tell that client, hey, look, because of the volatility with lumber and the craziness of what's been going on with it, I have no choice but to make this an allowance because, this is what's happened with some of our past homes. We got a quote for the lumber, and then the lumber skyrocketed, and it's not fair for us to have to eat that cost. And they're going to agree with that, of course. They're not going to want to eat it either, but they understand, what the thought process is there for you. So if you're going to get a bid, $35,000 today, you let the client know, hey, look, we have to make this an allowance, but there is a chance with it being an allowance that if lumber does go down, 2 months from now when we're dropping the lumber at your site. So say maybe the bid we got today is 35. When we drop it at your site, it's 33. You're going to get a credit of $2,000. So that would be a good way to explain it to them, to where I think that they would be open to it, and then it protects you as well. So I think that's, maybe something to consider these days with what's going on. Well, I think that's going to do it. I hope that gives you a clear picture of what an allowance is and how to use an allowance for your benefit and for the client's benefit. And really, that's the best scenario. I mean, anything that you're doing in this business, you want it to be mutually beneficial to you and the client, or if you're just building the spec house, to you and you at this point. But things that are mutually beneficial are just going to help you grow and help your reputation, and it's going to benefit everybody. That's the way you want to do business. So that's all I got for today. If you don't subscribe, please do so. If you have any comments or questions, leave me a comment. As I've mentioned before, I am working on putting a course together. I'm excited to be putting that out. And I'm also going to be working on something else, like a membership site, where I'll get into more detail in other videos. But anyways, have a great day. God bless.